Hello everybody, welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news as Michael Carrick moves closer to being Manchester United's new manager and Jason Wilcox moves closer to transforming from Man United Director of Football into circus clown. We've got some really interesting stuff coming out again. Conor Gallagher's Here We Go to Spurs, by the way. Villa and Spurs both battled it out. Spurs have won that race. Man United obviously have spent the last week interviewing interims instead of chasing midfielders that might actually improve the team. There we go with that one. We've also got why Carrick was chosen. We'll get into that as well. Some interesting stuff coming out from Ben Jacobs' interview with Beth this afternoon I want to delve into as well. Man United expect Champions League football as well. This has come out from James Ducker that they see it as a golden opportunity that Manchester United get Champions League football this season. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. It's absolutely incredible. But look, we will get into all of that. And I want to start off with Wilcox's plan. Jason Wilcox got a clear plan, apparently. We're going to delve straight into that as well. Athletic podcast today. Players complained to Wilcox after Wolves game leading to that meeting with Amorim. Sounds like bullshit, says Paul. Oh, mate, I've had a headache. Right, they're appointing Carrick and all the spins coming out again. You know, it's almost like they think because they've appointed Carrick, they're good again. Have you ever noticed with this ownership, they think they're good again when they're absolute shit? But we'll talk about that because I've got to talk about Surfshark first, who are sponsoring the show tonight. If you don't know what Surfshark is, it's a VPN, a leading service for protecting your online data and privacy, a virtual private network. Securely safeguards your privacy, your private messages, your photos, your videos, etc. Allows changing virtual location on platforms like Netflix. So you could be watching Netflix in New York like I was, but you want to watch your London Netflix because it's a different TV series. So you're in New York, you change your location to London. Basically, you can change your location anywhere in the world to something else where you can watch different stuff maybe. It also offers Surfshark One suite, including alert, personal data breach notifications, search, private ad-free browsing, antivirus, and alternative ID. And it's unlimited simultaneous use. So you can use it on your phone, your laptop, and your other phone if you've got one, etc. And it works on Android, iOS, Amazon Fire, all that lot. But the best bit is you get a special offer with the United Stand. You get 4 months free with the code United Stand. So use code United Stand for an extra 4 months free. Link in the description or scan the QR code. If you've got a VPN, maybe check this one out. If you've never tried a VPN, try out Surfshark. Comprehensive digital package with a 30-day money-back guarantee as well. Grab this exclusive offer with the code United Stand for premium digital protection. Thank you very much to Surfshark for sponsoring today's show. I wish you could protect us from the Glazers and Ineos as well. Has it got that as part of it as well? 4 months free. VPN, lock them out. They can't get in. Change their location to, I don't know, outer Mongolia with no transport. That would be great, wouldn't it? Anyway, thank you very much to Surfshark. So, look, 35 million for Conor Gallagher is a horrible deal, says Rory. Gallagher to Spurs, well, you will be fuming, Mark, says Ross. Look, Carrick last time delivered nothing, says Mike JW. With these players, he would deliver nothing. We aren't getting a midfielder. This is an absolute shower. And Xabi Alonso for Man United manager, what's your take? So a few early questions coming in there. Look, I'll talk about Conor Gallagher in a moment. For me, I would take Conor Gallagher, but I also take on board and respect the fact that some of you wouldn't. But the bigger point is this. We've sacked Ruben Amorim because he wanted players. And we've spent a week interviewing an interim. And we're sort of walking out like a boss. Yeah, we're back. And, other teams that are competing with us, Spurs and Aston Villa, are trying to buy players. So Conor Gallagher's more of a symbol to me of what other clubs are doing in the market that we're not doing. And I certainly don't think Man United are good enough in the midfield to be turning their nose up at Ruben Neves or Conor Gallagher or any other midfielder for that example. But where I want to start off tonight, well, there's two things actually. I think it was Jamie Jackson has said that Michael Carrick might be backed in the January transfer window for a midfielder. I mean, I just find this hilarious. I mean, I want it to happen. I definitely want it to happen. I mean, please don't take it back. But why would you back an interim? Why would you sack your manager to back an interim in January? And also, you've lost the window anyway because it's the middle of January now and you're going, oh, Michael, do you want a midfielder? I mean, I just can't get my head around how stupid they are. If that happens, right, it has been reported that when Carrick gets the job, if he wants backing in the January transfer market, they'll do it. And I'm just sort of like, but this is, you know, what? What? You know? I'm aware Alonso's been sacked, but this is not the Real Madrid stand. This is the United stand. So jog on if you want to talk about that. He'll never come to Man United anyway. He's a Liverpool player, isn't he? But he also plays 3 at the back. So, yeah, he will never come to Man United. But this was the one I really wanted to talk about. So this was, I think, the Athletic podcast again. So I need to read this verbatim. Jason Wilcox has a very clear idea on where Man United should be. Wilcox wants to steer United towards younger signings like Le Mans, Dorgu and Sesko. This is because he believes these profiles will be considered top players within 2 or 3 years. Who is this Pratt? What? Who is this guy? Like, seriously, what? Dorgu, who a year in is still being criticised because he's not ready. And I like Dorgu. You know, Le Mans, who's a kid, and Sesko, who's a kid, and Wilcox wants to do more of it. Who does he think he bloody is? David Attenborough? He thinks he's bloody Louis Armstrong. I've got all the time in the world. David Attenborough, Wilcox. Yeah? Oh, we've planted these seeds, and in 2 to 3 years, we'll come back, and hopefully they'll grow into something strong and thrive in the community. You're not David Attenborough. You're not Louis Armstrong. You're Amazon Prime. Next day delivery, you dick. Who does he think he is? Oh, I want to buy more young players that might be good in 2 or 3 years. Oh yeah, we've got 2 or 3 years. 2 or 3 years sounds great. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, 2 or 3 years is fantastic. That's absolutely great. What a prat. What an absolute prat. And it almost feels like, well, Carrick's coming in now. You love that, don't you? Now put a bit of spin around me. You know, I've got a really clear plan. I want to get more players like Dorgu, Lamens and Sesko. Yeah. You know, Jason Wilcox won the Premier League with Blackburn Rovers. Guess what their average age was? Over 25. Yeah? They didn't win it with kids. You know, when Leeds got relegated, he was part of that team. They'd bought a load of kids as well. What does he not learn about anything? Has he learned nothing? I mean, sack this guy. Get rid of this guy. But having said that, in fairness to Wilcox and in fairness to Barada, I saw Ben Jacobs today when he was doing the interview with Beth, and he was saying that, you know, Wilcox and Barada, they'll be reviewed at the end of the season, and, you know, if their performance isn't good enough, their jobs could be in danger. I couldn't give a toss. Because the person making that decision is useless as well. I saw a load of people going, oh yeah, get to the summer and get rid of Wilcox. What? But the problem is, it's the person making that decision. It doesn't matter if they get rid of Wilcox in the summer, because the replacement will probably be just as bad because of the people who are going to make them. We need to change the owners. We need to change the bloody owners. I don't know why people get excited about sacking the CEO or sacking the director of football, because it'll be the same prats making the same decision again. The Glazers and bloody Sir Jim. So, look, I like Sesko, I like Le Mans, and I like Dorgu, but we don't need more of them. We need more experience in the team. You know, that is not the strategy. But I actually think I think that's all Wilcox has got, by the way. I think Wilcox's big thing is just trying to buy loads and loads of young players. I think that's all he's got. I think that's his trick. That's his party trick, you know. That's it. You know, you meet him at a party. Hello, Jason. I believe you're such and such's partner or wife or husband. What is it you do? Well, I work in football, and I'm really obsessed with buying players under 22. That's about it, really. I don't have anything else. Yeah, and I like to be the manager when I'm director of football as well. Yeah, see you later. This is exactly how they reduce the standards in the fan base, by solving big issues with inexperienced players, says Hader. And Emily Derry says, bringing young players into this team when the likes of Delo throw 18-year-olds under the bus when it goes wrong, that's going to end well, says Emily Derry. Wilcox is Mr. Bean in disguise as one and only. And I'm getting to the point, I think the Glazers are secretly Liverpool or City fans. You know what, Ash? I actually thought that the other night. You couldn't sabotage Man United any better than the last 2 years. I know it's completely and utterly scandalous to say it, but in the sense that it's not true, they're just ridiculously shit. But if you were trying to sabotage Man United over the last 2 years, you couldn't do a better job than Sir Jim, because we've basically sacked half our workforce, which I am absolutely convinced does not make us better. I don't think you can sack half your workforce and be a better organisation. So you do that, you cripple the company by, halving its workload, halving its workforce. You You pay to get a director of football out of Newcastle, then sack him. You stick with Ten Hag, give him £300 million, then you sack him. You bring Amorim in on a big project, then you sack him after a year, having spent £250 million on him as well. You appoint 2 people who are clearly clueless in Barada and Wilcox. I mean, it's a sabotage project. But the reality is it's not a sabotage project. They actually think they're doing well. They actually think they're going to do good. But it's incredible when you list off all this. And I've only scratched the surface there as well. There's a load of other stuff they've done as well, like trying to knock Old Trafford down. Wilcox is so deluded he thinks a Rolo is a polo. We need players now that are decent, not in 3 years' time. We cannot forego now, says Mike. Yeah, but you know my big problem is, if he wants to bring in more Sescos and more Le Mans and more Dorgus, I've already seen in the last 2 games, Le Mans look a little bit bewildered. I think when Amorim was here, he was fine. I think the last 2 games, it's probably quite a big thing for a new goalkeeper who's young to see his manager sacked and then be uncertain. He looked a bit uncertain in the cup game. Dorgu's been like that for a year, up and down, and Sesco's been like that for the last 6 months. So, look, I hope they can be good players, but I'll tell you what, Dorgu, Le Mans and Sesco would be a lot better players if they were playing in the team in 1996. Because you'd have Cantona, Keane, you'd have proper players around them. So what Wilcox hasn't figured out is there's nothing wrong buying young players, but make sure you've got a platform for them to be developed, nurtured and looked after. And we saw it with Lacey yesterday. Nobody grabbed hold of him after the yellow card and calmed him down and said, calm down. Nobody did. You left to fend for yourself, Hope you're well, Mark, and United Stand, WWE Raw and TUS at the same time is things you love to see. Just want to say thank you to all of the community. Great shows. Thank you, Daniel. Hope you're doing very well. And as a player, why would you sign for an interim, says Reese. And Xabi Alonso would genuinely still be our best midfielder if he comes to United, says 1 Inch Wonder. JJ Gabriel will surely leave our club, says Emil. And did you see how quick Madrid had their interim, says Jacob. Mate, the reason we've taken so long on this interim is because we're actually trying to kill time. We're actually doing it on purpose. We're actually doing this on purpose. And because you know what? They probably knew Conor Gallagher was going to Spurs or Villa. So how do you cover that up? Well, we're interviewing Carrick. We're interviewing Solskjaer. They know they're not going for Gallagher. And they know the fan base are going to react to that. And it's not because the fan base think Conor Gallagher's the best thing since sliced bread. It's because it's rivals buying midfielders and we're not. And I think people need to realise that when we talk about Conor Gallagher. So Villa were going to get him. Spurs have just come in at the last minute. When we're talking about Conor Gallagher, right, people should be outraged by this because it's not actually about that. I would take Conor Gallagher at Man United. I think we should go for him. But even if you don't think we should go for him, I'm still right because why are Villa and Spurs buying midfielders when they've got McGinn, Kamara, Onana, Tielemans, Bergvall, Bentancur, Palhinha, Sarr? They've got loads of midfielders and they're trying to buy a midfielder. Manchester United have got a shower of shit and we're sat on our arse choosing between interims. And that's the real quiz. That's the real thing. It's not about Conor Gallagher. You might want him, you might not. It's the fact that other clubs with better midfields than us are buying midfielders in January and we're sat there with a shit midfield doing nothing. And more important than that, the midfield is going to become more important over the next few weeks with a back 4. Because when you're playing with 3 centre-backs, you've got more coverage for your defence. When you're playing with 2, your midfield needs to be really good to protect them. And we're not good enough. So, look, maybe we will do something in the next 2 weeks. Maybe we will. But I'll tell you what, we weren't going to. We weren't going to buy a midfielder at the start of the January window. So whatever we do at the back end of it is going to be rushed and panicked. And that's United's tactic. It reminds me of the bad start to the season that Ten Hag had. And we had no money. And then suddenly £120 million was found under the bed for Casemiro and Anthony. And you think, well, it's great that we're doing those deals, but why are we doing them so late in the window? Why is it always reactionary? This is not how big clubs are run. Reactionary. Everything's reactionary all the time. Oh, Amorim said something we don't like. Sack him. What are we going to do now? Bring Ollie back. Everyone's taking the piss. You give it Carrick instead. Now let's buy a midfielder. It's just all over the place. All over the place. Regime change obviously is the bigger play here, and hopefully it can happen. But in the short term, and then you get things like this from James Ducker saying that United still really believe we can get Champions League football this season and that it's a golden opportunity. I tell you what a golden opportunity is. It's being single, walking into a bar and an attractive person giving you a wink and saying, sit next to me. That's a golden opportunity. That is not what Man United have got. Trust me, we've walked into the bar, everyone's laughing at us because our trousers are down and we've shit ourselves. That's not a golden opportunity. Nobody's saying, come and sit here, let's have a good night. If Man United think we have a golden opportunity to get Champions League football, I'll tell you what, I don't know what they think isn't a golden opportunity, because it definitely isn't. I've been watching football for over 40 years, and I'm sure many of you have been watching football all your lives. There is no way that we have a golden opportunity for Champions League football. And I tell you what, we have to take on board and assume that Champions League football is top 4. It probably will be top 5 if English teams do well in the second half of the season and we get the second spot again like we did last year. But you can't assume that. What right has Sir Jim Radcliffe or Jason Wilcox got to go, well, everyone else in Europe will do really well and we'll get 5th place? So basically your plan is that everyone else does all the hard work, England gets another spot, and then you get 5th place. I mean, what a great plan that is. Again, so reactionary. How can we sit there and go, it's a golden opportunity to get Champions League football, when the best opportunity will be to scam 5th, which may or may not happen depending on everyone else doing well? It's not a golden opportunity, is it? It's not a golden opportunity. I think there's a slim chance that we can get Champions League football. I think there's a half a chance that we can get Europa League football, but I wouldn't call them golden opportunities. We've got one of the worst midfields in the league. We're now going to a new formation. The players are clearly bewildered. We've just had our arse spanked by Brighton reserves, if we're being completely honest. And we think we've got a golden opportunity. I mean, look, James Ducker is not the sort of journalist to just make stuff up. So why are United putting it out there? Why are Man United putting it out there on a Monday morning, a week after they've sacked a manager, where they're doing nothing in the transfer market, and they've just been knocked out of the FA Cup? Why are they putting it out there that they think Champions League football is a golden opportunity? Do they know? Is everybody else just going to suddenly start playing shit or something? And it's the cheek of it. It's the spin again. It's almost like you own a restaurant, right? You don't put everything you buy is cheap. The hygiene's terrible. And then you go, I think we've got a golden opportunity to get a Michelin star, and it's all down to you, to the chef. And the chef's going to go, I'll try my best, but you're responsible for it. So you're basically saying to Michael Carrick, go and get Champions League football. I mean, piss off. You're having a laugh. You're responsible. You can't just say we're not buying players in January. We've just sacked our manager. We're changing the formation. The team's a load of shit, and yeah, you can go. We expect Champions League football. That's not how it works. Being an owner, you don't just produce and deliver shit and then go, and I expect Champions League football. Yeah, that's on you. That's on you to provide the circumstances and situation for that to happen. And you're not providing that situation. You might think you're going to get Champions League football. Some people might think there's a bigger chance of finishing outside the top 10. I don't know. Spurs and Man United are in the same situation, says Dominic. If they get Carrick signings, then they were sacking Amorim either way. It wasn't the statement to back him, says Red Hawk. I don't know what you mean there. If they get Carrick signings, then they were sacking Amorim either way. It wasn't the statement to back him. Still don't know what you mean. Irony is we haven't replaced Carrick in the midfield, says Alex. And hi, Mark. So if Wilcox knows everything and keeps pushing his opinions, let's stick him in the dugout and watch it crumble, says Alex. And yeah, but he's got his fall guy now, hasn't he? He's got someone else, in the dugout that he's chosen that, has to take all the responsibility now. Isn't backing Carrick in January if we do make signings basically saying he'll be the permanent manager? Yes, we need players now, but we all know Ineos and the Glazers won't spend on a temporary manager, says Lewis. Well, I'm going to talk about Carrick and the long-term-ism of Carrick in a moment. We need to find the next Kante, says Alexander. No, we don't. We don't need to find the next anything. I'm tired of finding the next anything because, as I say, Yoro is meant to be the next Rio or the next Ramos, and he's not going down that path, is he? Because we're not developing him properly. So I don't want the next anything. I want the current something. I want more Mbermos. I want more Cunhas. I want more players that are ready to go, because even they come in and struggle. I mean, has anybody ever figured this one out, right? We buy kids and we expect them to ball and we expect them to fulfill their talent, and we haven't figured it out that we buy 25-year-olds and they struggle. So Have you ever figured it out that the environment at Man United and the culture is shite? That even good players come here and struggle. So what chance has a kid got? And this is the plan. What, Mark, do you think Wilcox is Diddy in disguise, says user? Let's grow up, come on. Let us hope that the owners will finally come to the senses if Man United doesn't make it any European football again for next season, says Angel. Josh says cycling, sailing, motorsports, football, automotive industry, Ineos have a portfolio of failure, delusion and denial make them dangerous, says Josh. And Sir Jim's genius strategy is to buy young players now because at the end of the day, in 2 to 3 years, they'll be 2 to 3 years older, says One Inch Wonder. We can let these owners start building. We can't let these new owners start building the new stadium or we're finished. Now is the time to put pressure on them, says Dazzo. Look, the minute they get signed off to do that stadium, it's over. They're not going anywhere. 5 years, it's just, no matter how bad it gets, we're stuck with them. So, you know, whether that can be stopped, I don't think it can. But that once that starts, they ain't going anywhere. They're not going anywhere. I love the United heritage of young players, but what's the point of signing all students with no teachers to teach them the subject? They will fail, says Vib. And hope we lose 5 matches in a row so fans can see it's not the system. Sack the owners, says Yazin. Youngsters need to be around the best, not a mess, says Mike JW. And why lot rumour saying Amorim could go to Tottenham, says Man United Machines. He won't go to Tottenham. I hope he doesn't go to Tottenham. That'd be a bloody nightmare. Jason Wilcox has got a black belt in judo, says Greg. I couldn't give a shit. Maybe he's good at throwing people on the floor then, because he's certainly not good at lifting up Man United. Solskjaer demanded a midfielder. Carrick didn't, says Rundan. How do we know that? Louis Finney, welcome to Members Club. You see, Paramount is trying to pull a Glazer leverage takeover of Warner Bros. They've set a good template, says Red Hawk. And Jason Wilcox, yeah, we're not reading that. Stig says, look at City. They are one of the best teams in the world. And in 1 year, they've signed 10 new players and are still building. We've bad players for 10 years. That's what's wrong with the club, says Stig. Is promises all we have them? I'm vomiting it, says John. Evan Whelan, welcome to the Members Club. Hope you're doing well. And with buying young players, what will happen to Project 2028? That will change to Project 23, 2035. Keep fans distracted, says Press Resistant. I'm glad you mentioned Project 2028 because that's Omar Barada, isn't it? You know, another liar. Well, not a liar, another incompetent fool. You know, he's said something that we can all just remember now that's never going to happen, was never going to happen. And it just shows, again, you've got Wilcox and Barada who've got absolutely no idea about Man United. And they come out with stupid ideas all the time that get proven to be stupid. If Class of 92 were coming through in today's squad, they wouldn't come out as legends. Had leaders like Keane, Cantona, Bruce to bed them in, says the Beast. And Madrid are showing how a club of stature should move, says Class of 99. And this is exactly how they reduce the standards in the fan base by solving big issues with inexperienced players, says Hader. Thank you very much. Well, look, just before I talk about Carrick, there was something today that came in from, where was it? I want to read that about Amorim if we get time. But basically, I think it was somebody from the Nice Supporters Association that basically said Ineos are shit. No, yeah, here we go. Solange Claude, president of the Nice Supporters Club. Ratcliffe may be an expert in the chemicals industry, but he has shown he knows nothing about football. He is an incompetent. I can understand how all those United fans must be feeling. What he's doing to their club has already been done to ours. There was plenty of optimism when Ratcliffe's brother Bob was first appointed to runners. He did not last too long, nor did Sir David Brailsford, the cycling man out of his depth in football. That sums up the whole approach. Now people from the past have been put in charge, a bit like what is happening at United. And that was from the president of the Nice Supporters Club. So basically, what's happening to us has been happening to them for a lot longer. You know. But look, in relation to Michael Carrick, we are expecting the official announcement of Michael Carrick tomorrow. And some interesting stuff coming out from the Ben Jacobs interview with Beth this afternoon. Sir Alex Ferguson prefers Carrick to Solskjaer. Which wouldn't surprise me. I think Sir Alex Ferguson has a very big say in what goes on at Manchester United. And I would imagine that Sir Jim Radcliffe is absolutely shitting himself because he's surrounded by morons who keep making bad choices. So he's probably heavily leaning on people like Sir Alex Ferguson now as he's in shit, basically. So if Sir Alex prefers Carrick to Ollie, I prefer Carrick to Ollie, so I don't have a problem with that. You might have a problem with why we're asking Sir Alex. You know, Moyes was a shit decision. And Sir Alex has been out of football for a long time. But look, I'd rather they spoke to Sir Alex than Jason Wilcox. Roy Keane might disagree, but yeah, it's. I think the Carrick choice is, as I said this morning, it's the best of a bad bunch, really, because I don't really want an interim. However, Ben Jacobs was also pushing the story that Ineos, that Michael Carrick doesn't want the job, like he sees it as an interim job. I think it was Ben who was saying that there's an expectation that jobs like Bournemouth and a couple of others will come up in the summer. Bournemouth, Crystal Palace, and if Carrick does well at Man United, then maybe he can get a full-time job at someone like Bournemouth or Crystal Palace. So Carrick doesn't see it as a permanent job. He sees it as an interim, and then he leaves. Solskjaer apparently saw it as a stepping stone to the permanent job again. And to be honest with you, I don't know how much truth there is in that. United was certainly looking at Solskjaer very seriously at the back end of last week. I think they've changed their mind because they've seen that. I mean, look, this is pure speculation, but my feeling is they were going to go with Solskjaer because they thought the fan base would just go, oh, he's at the wheel, and he'd shield the board. And I think they were probably taken aback by the response that half the fan base didn't want to go back to Solskjaer, and the mainstream media were ridiculing it. And I think they realised that appointing Solskjaer could go very, very wrong very, very quickly and would make them look even worse. So I think they've gone with Carrick. And I think that if Solskjaer had got the job and done reasonably well, I think they would have given him the full-time job. So I think it's a bit unfair to say that Solskjaer wanted the full-time job and that's why he's not got it. I don't think that was the case. I think Solskjaer probably did want the full-time job, but I think United were happy to bring him back up until a certain point last week where I think they realised how big it was backfiring on them and how much they were being ridiculed. Whereas Carrick is seen as we haven't had Carrick as the interim manager, have we? So... But Romano was saying this afternoon that Darren Fletcher was firmly in the race until the Brighton game yesterday. So I think it's just presented itself in relation to that. But look, it's going to be a very difficult job. Carrick, the Man United players have got 2 days training, 2 days off. They're back on Wednesday. This is apparently because of the hectic festive period. You'd think after losing to fucking Brighton like that, you'd have them in tomorrow. But apparently they've got 2 days off. And then Carrick is expected to take training on Wednesday ahead of a Saturday lunchtime game against Man City, where it's going to be very, very difficult. But look, we are where we are. We're going with what we've got. Other clubs are buying midfielders. We're not. We've got 2 very difficult games coming up where we do well to take 3 points, let alone 6. And I mean, I basically would take a win and a loss in the next 2 games and say it's okay. They're very difficult games. They're the 2 teams going for the title, so very, very difficult start for Carrick, and it'll be very interesting to see if we get a bit of a bounce. Woodgate coming, do you know, says Garfield. Oh, yeah, Jonathan Woodgate's apparently going to come with him. I think he had him at Middlesbrough, former Leeds player. Max says, Ineos left New Zealand rugby sponsorship. Corruption always, says Max. So Jim is an old man. When Qatar left and Ineos won, my first supercharge was that he bought in to leave the ultimate legacy. Stadium, football, no, says Andreas. I've seen Wilcox's secret playbook, and number 3 on the list is to put a whoopee cushion under Arteta's chair. Golden opportunity, says Liam. Hi, Mark. Xabi Alonso left Real Madrid. Should United go after him? I mean, no coach can save with those prats on the board, but still, what do you think? Says Eliel. Look, Real Madrid have been rumoured to be sacking Alonso for a long time. I think Real Madrid can be a little bit ruthless. I think too ruthless, Real Madrid sometimes. Real Madrid are a huge football club and they always win things, so you can't really criticise them. But bringing Alonso in and then sacking him after 6 months is just incredible to me. I mean, what did they think they were getting? It's a little bit like United with Amorim. I mean, what did you think you were getting with Alonso? If you look at what he did at Leverkusen, it was pretty, easy to see the way he wants to play. And they wanted to change him, which was a bit stupid. But look, Alonso at Man United, I don't see it. I don't see it at all. I really don't. I don't even think it's the right choice for us, really. I mean, he's done very well at Leverkusen. He's been sacked by Real Madrid. I don't think that's the profile of manager for Man United to go. And primarily, his success was 3 at the back at Leverkusen. Emily Derry says the model that, but you know what? Like last week, people were linking us to Enrique. I think this arrogance needs to stop. It'd be very interesting to see who we end up with in the summer, because I think it will be more likely to be somebody that's punching up rather than somebody that's punching down. And what I mean by that is, I think if you went for an Ancelotti or someone like that, they're taking a risk coming to Man United, because look what it did to Jose, look what it did to other managers. Whereas if you're an Iriola at Bournemouth or a Glasner at Crystal Palace, they're punching up. They're stepping up from smaller clubs into a massive club. And, you know, you can manipulate those people. I know Ben Jacobs said they're probably going to go for somebody with Premier League experience as well. When you look at Premier League experience, that narrows it down massively. You can dream the dream of people like Ancelotti or Conte or Tuchel, but in reality, Premier League experience also means people like Glasner and Iriola as well. Emily Derry says the model that Glinios are proposing requires expert knowledge and an established clear vision, neither of which are evident. They hark back to Sir Alex Ferguson, and as far as I'm concerned, they misunderstood what made it and him great, says Emily Derry. Well, yeah, look, I mean, what is the vision? Like, and the scary thing is, every vision they've told us has failed spectacularly, whether it's Project 28, backing Ten Hag and sacking him, bringing Ashworth in and sacking him, you know, starting a whole big project with Amorim and sacking him, spending money on that project as well. Everything they've done, everything they say cannot be trusted. But I don't actually know where they're going to go next, really. They've sort of backed themselves into a corner that we've got to go back for. We have to go back for. Well, Bournemouth play a back four, I think. Crystal Palace don't. Tuchel sort of can and doesn't. Ancelotti does. Conte doesn't. So first and foremost, they've got to figure out, if we're going with a back four, you need a really good back four manager that's going to stick with a back four. Then you've got to have an idea of how you want to build that team out, and you've got to have an idea of how you want the team to play. I mean, they're 3 pretty easy things for me if I'm in charge, but they seem to really struggle with that. You know, they've been sporadic with formations. They've been, you know, not very insistent on a certain style of football. And Emily makes a great point about Sir Alex Ferguson as well. Like, he didn't go around just buying young players. He didn't. He had experienced players supplemented by young players. He had total control of the football club from top to bottom. So how can you hark back to something that you're factually opposed to? They don't want a manager. They want a head coach. They don't want a head coach that has a massive say in signings. They want to do it. They don't want to bring experienced players in over 25. They want to bring young players in. So they sort of, you know, it's almost like shouting about Oasis, but being a fan of Kylie Minogue. It's like you're not listening. You don't like that music. You're just saying it because it's hip. You don't actually like it. You're dancing around your bloody kitchen, singing, spinning around, and you are spinning around. You're the masters of spin, and that's how I feel. They pluck these ideals out of the sky and talk about them so that they can be attached to it, but actually that's not who they are. That's not who they are at all. They're not trying to build anything like Sir Alex Ferguson. They're not preparing a team to be successful. They're building youngsters. And I still don't know if, I thought we'd buried it. PRV, performance, results, vision. What performance is there? Yesterday was dreadful, and we had a back four. What's the vision? Well, that's on the club. What is the vision? It's very, very murky, and the results have disappeared as well. Anderson, Mainu, and Believer midfield is top 4, says John. John, I'm not going to say you're the problem. But the fact that you've done a super chat about that is really quite sad, because it's comments like that that inspires idiots to give these prats more time. What planet are you living on that you think we're getting Elliot Anderson and Carlos Baleba? Baleba will come because he's playing shit for Brighton. He will. I agree that Baleba will come, but was Baleba not the player that Amorim wanted? Because everybody told us Amorim wanted Baleba. It was Amorim that wanted Baleba. Amorim was obsessed with Baleba. So if we sign Baleba, Amorim wasn't obsessed with him. And that, a lot of ex-players pretend is all okay, says Strukov. Omar Barada is lazy, says Jay. Glazers have done horrible things to this club, but employing Ineos is up there. The Glazers don't get half as much negativity as Ineos, yet they own us, says Rory. The Glazers have played a master class. I would certainly say that. You know, we don't mention the Glazers enough. They own the football club. IC says, do you like stuff? Ben Jacobs said today that Amorim knew he was sacked Friday after bust up with Wilcox. Decision was made pre-Leeds, apparently. Interesting, says Erlex. I don't think the decision was made before Leeds, because if Amorim had known that for certain, then I don't think he'd have managed the Leeds game. I think he probably felt it was coming, and United probably gave themselves a couple of days to make sure. But why not just sack him on the Saturday if he was sacked? But it's irrelevant. Look, it's funny you mention Amorim, because I saw something today, and this was from a Sporting Lisbon fan, and I'll summarise it, but it was on Reddit, I think. As a Sporting supporter, I genuinely believe Man United fans will come to regret the club's decision to dismiss Amorim. It was unfair to judge his system without first providing him with suitable midfielders and wing-backs. I mean, I completely agree with this. And it's funny that you read this from a Sporting fan, because for me, we never solved the midfield or the wing-backs in a system that is absolutely essential. The club had a young, promising manager with a strong personality, someone who was also willing to challenge an underperforming board. Now United risk being held back by veteran players who remain more out of attachment than ambition, seemingly willing to see the club decline rather than pursue new challenges elsewhere. I also find it unlikely that many managers would be eager to take on the Man United role at this stage of the season. Amorim was transparent about his system and preferred style of play from the very beginning. He interviewed with Liverpool, who ultimately decided not to proceed because they wanted to play a different way, which is entirely reasonable. However, Manchester United chose to back him, knowing how he played and knowing the system. Given that he had clearly communicated his philosophy from day one, it's difficult to understand why the board later began to micromanage his work. I guess I understand why they did it, because of the pressure from outside. Rather than instructing him on how to coach, he should be allowed to do his job, while the scouting department should have fulfilled theirs by providing him with suitable midfielders and wing-backs. During his time at Sporting, he revolutionised the club's style of play to the extent that even the B team adopted his system to ease player transitions into the first team. And let me tell you, we played beautifully. It wasn't boring, it wasn't slow. We completely dominated teams both in the Portuguese League and Europe. This is a long-term project that requires trust and patience. And look, you know, obviously that's a very one-sided view of things. You know, we played Bruno Fernandes in the midfield. We played a back five against 10 men. You know, it wasn't perfect. But I suppose it's a bit like a young player. I would liken Amorim's time at Manchester United to giving up on a 20-year-old who could be world class. And some people say, well, it might have been Garnacho. So, you know, there are two sides to it. But I think that when a manager comes in his first year to take on an enormous job and go in a completely different direction, it's probably to be expected that there's going to be mistakes and there's going to be low points. We finished 15th in the league. We lost to Spurs. But the blame lies completely, and I do see some people still doing this. They start talking about win ratios. They start talking about league position, etc., which are all totally valid. But it's not. The issue is not Amorim and whether we should have kept him or not. It's the people that brought him in, knowing what he was, and then trying to blame him for being who he was. You know, the last time I checked, when he was doing really well at Sporting, he wasn't doing interviews saying, please, Man United, sign me up. I mean, he was being linked with Man City. It was Man United that swooped in and went, now or never, come to Man United. We did that. We took him, knowing who he was, brought him here, and then a year later, chewed him up and spat him out. And that, to me, is a disgrace, because the board are a disgrace. And where we are now, I can't lie, the wing-backs and the midfield were never good enough. And we're going to find that out over the next few months. The midfield isn't good enough. And we need to solve that. We can't go back now. We can't lament. You know, I'm sure, like Mourinho, there may be a time in the future where we look back and go, we got it wrong. Big time. But what we've got to do is get it right very, very quickly. And we need midfielders. And we need wide players now as well. We need wide players as well. Glazers have done that one as well. Okay, let me just catch up on some of this. I don't think we make 15th, just 13th. I genuinely don't think we'll finish outside the top 8. I think we'll be in the top 8 somewhere. Keel says, the unfortunate truth is we're looking to the Glazers to fix Ineos. We need both out, but we are at the mercy of the Glazers in regards to Ineos. Thank you, Keel. Hope you're doing well. So many open goals being missed by best in class, as it's me. Well, you know, the best in class thing is just laughable. You know, we brought a biking specialist in to do a 6-month strategic review that nobody knows what was in it. So David Brailsford. I don't even remember who mentioned best in class, but I presume it was Sir Jim. And with all due respect, Omar Barada was not best in class as a CEO. He wasn't even a CEO. So Omar Barada was not best in class. Jason Wilcox was not best in class. They were learner drivers, both of them. This was Barada's first job as a CEO, and this was Wilcox's first big job as a director of football. So they weren't best in class. They were learner drivers. So you could argue that, you know, maybe Dan Ashworth was best in class, but they got rid of him pretty quickly, didn't they? And to be honest with you, Ruben Amorim wasn't best in class. Ruben Amorim was a learner driver as well. Ruben Amorim was very similar to Erik ten Hag, a very good, up-and-coming foreign coach with a very good reputation for good attacking football. But, you know, he wasn't best in class either. So my vision of best in class is going and getting a CEO who's used to managing big football clubs. My vision of a best-in-class director of football is to go and get somebody that is a proven top-class director of football, like what Arsenal have done with Berta. And my vision of a best-in-class manager is getting a manager who's one of the best managers in the world. So we just haven't done it. And we've not done it on the pitch either, have we? You know, Sesko wasn't best in class. He was option 6. Le Mans isn't best in class. Dorgu wasn't best in class. Like, we've consistently bought prospects into the boardroom, onto the football pitch. My vision, Sir Jim soaked in best-in-class champers, says 1 Inch Wonder. And Cullen says, if we sign a midfielder in January, it'll be a board signing, not Carrick's, meaning they'd be looking at a yes man in the summer so they can call the shots, formation signings. We haven't reached bottom yet, says Cullen. And hi, I like Oasis and Kylie. Don't go there, Mark, says Mike. I would have took Steve Bruce over Carrick, says Love-Hate Games. Yeah, I definitely would not have done that. Nick P says, they're proven not to have a plan now, so I can see us hiring the Bolivian national coach now in the summer after he wins a few World Cup games. Thank you, Nick. There was a comment there that was quite interesting. Well, we haven't reached rock bottom, says Colin. It's something I've said a few times. Look, the incredible thing about the midfield is I think the club know they need midfielders, but I genuinely think they think in the summer they've got a chance to get somebody decent, so let's not bother now. But again, it's this whole Louis Armstrong approach, isn't it? We've got all the time in the world. We haven't got all the time in the world. But Wilcox is obviously somebody that's got no urgency to him at all. You know, he's a guy, but that's scary because that probably comes from people above. Like, the way you run Manchester United is the way they run Man City. It's like, this is a transfer market. What can we do in it? Because we've got to do something. We're not waiting to see if we can get somebody else in the summer. Let's get people in now. That's how you run a football club. But United seem to have this strange philosophy of, we know what we want and we'll wait till we can get it. But it doesn't work. It just doesn't work unless you already are good. If you're Arsenal, you might go, I mean, I don't know what Arsenal need, to be fair. If you're Liverpool, you might be going, we'd like a left winger, but, you know, I think we've got enough to do well this season without it, and then we'll go and get the player we want in the summer. But United can't do that. I was thinking, Mark, that the reason why we took so long picking the interim was because Wilcox is scared and maybe his job on the thin ice is Andre. Well, I hope so. They were going to sack Amorim in the summer, says Red Hawk. And hi, Mark. Did Carrick manage us before as a temp, says 92. He did. Carrick managed us briefly before Ten Hag. Must have been Ten Hag. Yeah, it was before. No, Rangnick. Yeah, Rangnick. Ollie got sacked. Carrick stayed for a couple of games. Rangnick came in. Rangnick wanted Carrick to stay, but he wanted a break. Have you noticed Wilcox looks like Quagmire from Family Guy? I don't watch Family Guy, Paul, so I'll leave that to the people who do. The club has more faces than a town hall clock, says Liam. And Ratcliffe claims Barcelona's Spanish Super Cup trophy now also belongs to United. This is guy who will make decision on Wilcox and co. Guy is a wet wipe, says Cyber Spider. Thank you very much for that. How far low is rock bottom? How far could we fall, says Reese. I think this is a good question because I think people think rock bottom is relegation. I don't think that happens. I think you've got to be a little bit more subtle than that. I personally think rock bottom, things getting worse, is not qualifying for Europe for 2 years in a row. I don't remember if we've ever done that. There's a question for the Boffins. Have we ever not qualified for Europe 2 years in a row in the Premier League era? That, to me, is as bad as finishing 15th. You know, because 15th is a one-off. Having less than 60 points 3 times in however many years, I'd be worried about that as well. I mean, we'd never been below 60 points in our entire Premier League history up until about 3 years ago. And now in the last, I think it's the last, no, it might not be 3 years because Ten Hag, I don't know, you know. I don't know. But it's things like that. Not qualifying for Europe 2 years in a row is criminal. So that would be, you know, hitting rock bottom as well. That would have to be hitting rock bottom further than last season. It's not always about where you finish in the league. It's about what the league's like. You know, this league isn't that good. And we're still not able to do anything about it. We talk about the midfield, but let's face it, I love Heaven and Yoro can become good, but they are not ready. Defence is a big problem, says Serious Talk. Look, you know me, when it comes to young players, I always want to be patient and back them, and there is always a way back, and we've got a few players like that at the moment. But Lenny Yoro, at the moment, if you want me to be absolutely honest, looks absolutely out of his depth. He looks really, really, really lacking in confidence. And the worst thing about that is, I was thinking this with Heaven and Yoro, is that in 3 centre-back system, it's brilliant because you're young, you're inexperienced, but you can learn in a safer environment. We're now going to a 2 centre-back system. You're on your own a lot more. We saw it with Welbeck the other day. He mugged him off yesterday. He's on his own. He's not touch tight, and Welbeck bangs it in the top corner. And he knows, as well as we know. And to be fair, not a lot of people blamed Yoro as, you know, but, you know, that was poor. He knows that. We know that. We don't need to make a big thing of it. But his positional sense is poor, and he doesn't close him down quick enough. And I've noticed over the last few weeks with Yoro, he's looked slow. People skip past him all the time. And he wasn't like that. It wasn't like that at the start of the season. I thought he started the season well with De Ligt. So, you know, it's another player in an environment that's just, it's difficult, you know. I mean, even Le Mans yesterday looked a bit shaky when he hasn't done. And they can't, Man United's a powerful entity, you know. And manager's been sacked. All sorts of stuff's going on. You're a youngster. It can be quite destabilising, and I think at the moment we'd be wise. I mean, I don't know what our best centre-back pairing is, but I would imagine it's Martinez and De Ligt. And Martinez doesn't look great. He might go Maguire and De Ligt. He might go Shaw and De Ligt, but I'd worry about Maguire's lack of pace. That's the problem. Also, little prediction. I think we're going to get a lot of injuries between now and May. It happened to Rangnick. I think players start to think, I don't fancy this. You know, players start to think, I don't like this. And I remember Rangnick, record amount of injuries. And I just think Wilcox coming up. Yeah, I do worry about that. Expo and Guraf talking about Alonso. When's Neville's next interview with Jim, says Lee. I always say decisions are either stupid or on purpose. So with these owners, which one is it? They're so stupid. Would you think it was on purpose, says Ramsey? I don't think it's on purpose. I think they're stupid. Spurs got Gallagher, says Andrew. Thank you very much for that. Carrick assisted Mourinho too, says Scott. With yeah, but you know what? We don't really want to go down that road because when Rui Faria left, it all went wrong for Mourinho, didn't it? With Carrick, it didn't go particularly well. I think Carrick came in as his assistant when Rui Faria left, and it all went to shit. So that's no reflection on Carrick, by the way. But I'm just saying it didn't go particularly well. It went better with Ollie. It was all right with Ollie. If United were looking at Sporting a year ago, they should have tried to get Hugo Viana, which is now the director of football of City. Best in class, says Rex. Carrick, done that one from Scott. Gallagher to the Chickens team for £40 million, says Ayus. I don't actually think that's a good move for Gallagher. I'd have gone to Villa. Talk to me about an oil takeover, Mark. Can we get a Saudi bid, says Constantine. Well, I saw that clip of David Beckham going around from 2023 where he was like, Man United need to be the biggest club in the world, and I know people that might be interested in it. I mean, I wonder who that was, and I wonder why it never came of anything, because the Glazers wanted to Jim. Sam says, if they really were serious about 2028, then you get players in at every opportunity. You don't waste a window. You get who's available. Yeah, exactly. 2028 is a short deadline, and you're right, you need to go out and get players. Ashish says nothing can change what's about to happen. It's over. This is not a football club. It's a cash cow for rich businessmen. Not in this lifetime, but I was born in 1990, so I saw most of the great times, says Ashish. Yeah, well, I've said it a few times, and there's no problem repeating it. I do think Man United has always been a cash cow to the Glazers. They never put any of their own money in, and they've made fortunes. I think Sir Jim Radcliffe fronts himself up as a United fan, but I think it's a business opportunity. You spend 1.8 billion on 28%. You use your mates in government, and you get a regeneration project done, and out of that you double your money in about 5 to 10 years, which means we're going to have 5 to 10 years of this, because their real play isn't football. It's a stadium. It's the regeneration project. This is just Man United, basically, if you want to get blunt, Manchester United are just a long-term savings account for billionaires. It's basically what we are. We're not a football club. We're just a long-term business savings account for Ineos and the Glazers, because once that stadium's built, we go up in value. What they wrongly assumed was that they could make us partially successful whilst they buy time to do it. But that's how I see United. I don't think they're going to go anywhere. And I think it's just all about building that stadium. Wan-Bissaka coming back if West Ham get relegated, says Dash. I doubt it. Get Xavi, says 44 Mount. How many plans do they seem to have? Heard so much about plans and yet see one materialise. If Wilcox is the plan, we are toast, says Mike. And how far low is Rock? I've done that one from Reese as well. Carrick needs a miracle, says Nick P. He's hardly Mr. Charisma either, and he has to pick them up and go on a winning streak with these players against tough teams. Look, everyone's free to make their own minds up, and I respect that. I just don't agree with the abuse. I've seen some horrible stuff said again about Beth, which I think is just disgusting. But hopefully, this community aren't going to do that and protect what we've built. But look, I don't necessarily agree with some of the stuff Beth said. I don't agree with some of the stuff you say, but I respect it. It's a very highly highly emotional time at the moment, and people have different ideas. What I would say about Carrick is, we've got Carrick till the end of the season. I want Man United to win games. I want Man United to be in Europe. Hopefully we can start to do that. It's not Carrick's fault we're in this situation. And ultimately, I don't think he'll be the full-time manager in the summer, so we'll be back, speculating about managers for the next few weeks and months anyway. I wouldn't be criticising Carrick for his interviews. I don't think he was ever that charismatic in interviews. I've seen him on the telly in recent months. He's not going to say anything. I watch Carrick as a pundit, and he doesn't say anything controversial. I think he's very good when he's talking about how the game is being played, but he's not going to be, this is not going to be Ranić. This is not going to be Mourinho. This is not going to be Amorim. This is not going to be Van Gaal. This is going to be very, Darren Fletcher-esque type press conferences. Dull, maybe, but, you know, that's not his fault. You know, this is where the club has, you know, put us in this position where they've had to put somebody in who is basically a placeholder. And Carrick will be doing his very level best, I'm sure, to try and get some results because he wants to have a job in management out of this, maybe not at Manchester United. So, look, it's a very safe choice for Manchester United. It's probably not going to be the most inspiring, but that's my point, really. This is not what United aren't selling a future. They're not selling a future. They're selling a plaster. And we all want a future and we all want a vision, but unfortunately, the club have decided to write off a season again. And it's the same as Rangnick. And it's, you know, it's sort of like we always want to be building for the future. I mean, if Carrick gets us playing quite good one game, you can't even go, ooh, if we stick with it. You can't. It's a write-off. We've just, the way I look at it is results. I just hope we can get some results to get us into Europe. And then the real next project starts in the summer, doesn't it? Do you think Amorim was City's first choice? Yes. The Snail. I think they brought Viana in ahead of Amorim, and he was going to be Pep's replacement. I'm convinced of that because they did the same with Begerstein. They brought him in earlier than Pep, and I think that was going to happen, but it didn't. Slavia Prague suffered 5 years under bad owners. In 2014, we fought relegation. Fans confronted them by raiding the stadium. 2 years later, we're champions. Start protesting properly, says Jan. It looks like 8th or lower is where it's heading, says Garrett. And if United were looking at Sporting a year ago, done that one. Okay, I need to get in the bath. My back's still bad, but it's getting better. Don't forget to tune in to the 10 o'clock show tomorrow. Something a little bit different for you. That's all I'm going to say. So make sure you tune in. And, of course, tomorrow we will get Carrick. Here we go, whatever. So, you know, is it that exciting? Not really, but it's not his fault, is it? Hopefully he can get us some results. Certainly going to be interesting. Take care. Do you think Rooney will come? I know Rooney said he'd do it. Again, are United doing it just because it's popular, or are they doing it because it's a good coaching appointment? And I don't know. Rooney would overshadow. If I was Carrick, I wouldn't bring Rooney in. Because if Rooney's the assistant, he's got more personality, more status than Carrick. I wouldn't bring Carrick. I wouldn't bring Rooney in if I was Carrick. That's nothing against Wayne. I just think Rooney's aura is bigger than Carrick. So I wouldn't do that. You know, I'd resist that and say, look, are we trying to spin fans positively, or are we trying to get results? We'll see. I mean, obviously, it'd be interesting if Rooney comes in, but we'll see. Take care, everyone. Stay safe. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in, by the way. Absolutely love the shows we've been having over the last few days. Make sure you smash a like and subscribe, and we'll speak to you later. Take care.